Hello! This is Brianna Wonderland, and I want to welcome you all to Spark Your Divine Feminine Power Through Pleasure, where we will bring together some of the world's teachers to fire up our divine power, pleasure, and feminine energy. This creational energy powers the world, and we want to find its power within and use it to elevate our everyday experience of life to new heights and new purpose. And I'm here with Karen Aberle. And she is an author of Love's Invisible Dance, The 7 Keys to Authentic, Joyful, and Lasting Relationship, of which she's been in one for a very long time. She'll probably share about that. The book crystallizes her studies in the philosophy of language, an 18-year apprenticeship in the tradition of the Huichol Indians of central Mexico, and her own 30-year marriage. She has taught the dance of relationship around the globe in corporate and community settings. A native New Yorker, she lives between her homes in Dallas, close to her children and grandchildren, and in Chile, where she avoids northern winters and celebrates life with her husband's family. And she's going to be talking to us mainly, but not only, about shed your sexual shame, get rid of that, and dance naked. So hi, Karen.
Hello. So happy to be with you.
Oh, good. I'm so happy to be with you. Okay, cool. So what do you also obviously have this book, and then the topic is shed your sexual shame and dance naked. What comes up for you around that? What do you want to share about that?
Well, I've been working with a lot of women over the last 30 years, a lot more than that in my life. And what I find is that a tremendous, an unfortunate number of women are hung up in some ways about their body, and particularly their sexuality. And, the truth is that there's no country on the planet that is encouraging girls to explore their sexuality, explore their bodies. Some people, some women have never looked at their own vulva. In fact, most women are calling them vaginas, but vagina only refers to the birth canal. There's this whole other glorious world of sexuality that's located in the same general area. But women, a great number of women are very uncomfortable about that.
Yeah, totally. Wow, that's really impactful too. The thing about countries, like to look at it as a global, scale, that we're not really paying attention to our bodies and pleasure, as a whole.
Right, and I think that this is because we live on a patriarchal planet for the most part. There may be a few indigenous tribes somewhere in which women have a different relationship to the community. But for millennia, women have been here to provide some kind of sexual relief or release to men. And I think that men have liked keeping it that way.
Yeah, totally. How do you inspire women in your work to delve into those issues and bring out their power and pleasure?
Well, I like to ask women how they feel about their sexuality. Do they have orgasms? How do they have orgasms? Many women can't have an orgasm in a formal male-female intercourse. And then there's shame associated with that I need to do this digitally or with technology or some other way. But I don't want my face to look bad. I've heard this. I don't want my face to look bad when I'm having an orgasm.
Wow.
I heard a joke once about Jewish women. How do you know when a Jewish American princess has an orgasm? She drops her nail file.
Oh.
Sad.
Wow. Yeah.
Sad.
It is sad. Yeah. Sorry, I was like, that's funny. And then, yes, that's sad, of
It
course.
is. It's sad funny, but this is what our culture cultivates.
Hmm. Yeah, and that it's interesting that you're talking about that dichotomy between how we think we look to other people and then how we don't let ourselves be satisfied and absorbed in that moment of pleasure.
Exactly. And if we can't open ourselves to that kind of sexual pleasure, we've really cut off our ability to um, our confidence in ourselves.
Mm.
You know, when you walk into a room, there are women who just know who they are.
Mm.
But my findings are that women who don't feel so good about their sexuality have a very low self-confidence,
Mm.
you know, and try to make up for it intellectually or try to make up for it in other ways, but there's no making up for it.
Mm. Hmm. I'm so interested about this correlation that you're drawing between confidence and somehow the core inner experience and how that, relates to sexuality.
Well, confidence is just another whole area of focus. I speak to it um, in my first chapter of my book.
Mm.
Is, you know, what is confidence? And what I find is many women saying, well, you know, I'll be more confident when I get that promotion or I get married or I have children or I accomplish whatever. Like there's some level of achievement that you have to have in order to be confident.
Mm.
And I like to present a different way of thinking about it because I think that there's no greater confidence than someone who is open, curious, generous, um, joyful.
Mm.
And it's not about beauty or accomplishment, but really about being at peace with who I am in the world. And that means that I can be confident, not because I've got a master's or a PhD. I can be confident because I know what I know, but also I know the vastness of what I don't know.
Mm.
And a lot of people who I've worked with balk at the idea that they're incompetent.
Mm.
Like some notion that you have to be competent in all of these different areas. And so when I am fully in peace with my body, that's a tremendous piece of the confidence business.
Mm. Yeah, totally. Being embodied. Because that's the way you're presenting the confidence is being embodied in the world.
That's right.
Mm. Yeah, and when you were talking, I could also feel like it has to do with the heart connection um,
Mm,
to the presence and joy and being able to be in connection with that point of place where spirit and body really come together.
yeah. There's also an incapacity to be present in the present moment. So what I'm finding is now it's Karen's question. It's the question that I ask everyone who will listen to me or talk to me. Um, but I'm asking it all the time. I'll ask you now.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being perfectly satisfied with your life in the present moment, what's your number?
Mm. At first, I was going to go with 8, but then I was like, well, there's a little bit more dissatisfaction. So I'm going to go with 7.5.
Okay, good. So then my next question is, what's missing between 7.5 to get to 10 for you?
Hmm. Well, the core of what's missing, I would say, is gratitude.
Where does that come from? Where are you going to get it?
comes from two places, I would say. One is just being in touch with the practice of gratitude. And the other is listening to all the different parts that need to be listened to fully so that whenever I do have dissatisfaction, I can meet the needs of that part that has dissatisfaction. And then that can relieve that. And then I can be more in touch with the naturally, you know, with just joy or presence or gratitude.
So here's the most important piece about that. And that is that you cannot postpone satisfaction for some future time. The only time that satisfaction is available is now, in the present moment. So either you're satisfied and in peace, that you have enough for the present moment. That's really what satisfaction means. Enough, having enough, so that I'm not hungering for more. And we're always aspiring. So it's not like we can, well, we'll be satisfied one day when I have more gratitude, or I have more health, or I'm taller, or thinner, or richer, or fill in the blank. Satisfaction's only available now. So right now, here we are, you and me.
Yeah.
And, you know, then the question comes up, is there something that you should be doing that you're not doing to take care of something missing for you now?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, are you fully satisfied?
Well, if you're going to put that definition, then right now I'm fully satisfied.
But you see, it makes a whole difference in your face.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'm fully satisfied. And what does that look like when you walk into a room?
Ooh.
Ooh, really? Talk about your divine feminine power.
Yes, this is good.
And there's one other piece to this, because obviously we live in the future and we have concerns for the future. So we need to know that, you know, we have a lease that is going to last for a certain amount of time. We have income. We, you know, we have food. We have things that, you know, we need to survive. But because we all have goals, or most of us do, we can be satisfied now having the goals that we have for the future if we have a plan. So I'm satisfied that I'm right on the right track to achieve what I have in mind. So being fully satisfied in the present moment means also being at peace with my past, and also being on track for the future. So all of that comes together for power.
Yes, I agree.
I'm glad.
That's awesome. I love how you bring all those concepts together in a very like concrete, easy to understand way.
Right. You know, this 1 to 10 question of mine is just pretty astounding. A lot of pushback I get is, well, is anybody ever perfectly, fully satisfied? Yes. Fully satisfied every day? Yes. And this is a practice. You know, it's a practice of self-observation, reflection, asking myself, where am I? How do I feel? Is it great? If it's not great, what's missing? Should I go get that? Do I need to make plans? Awesome.
Yeah, so awesome. It also really makes me think of the law of attraction, that if we want to embody that satisfaction and enoughness, we have to embody it, and then it comes to us.
That's right.
So, wow, that's great, Karen. Cool. And then that probably comes back into the conversation around sexuality and women's satisfaction with their own bodies.
Exactly.
Yes, there would be a big gap in that for a lot of people.
Oh, totally. You know, I speak in my book about the beauty mirror. You know, when you look in the mirror and you go, oh, You know, sometimes I do that. I say, oh my God, look at these wrinkles. Look at the, you know, I can't help being influenced by the culture of beauty, you know, that a 35-year-old looks a lot better than a 73-year-old.
Mm.
Well, I'll be 73 in April.
Oh, you
But, but we are so influenced by this culture of young beauty. And so what I'm proposing is that we toss the beauty mirror and then start looking at a different mirror, which is really the inner beauty mirror. You know, who am I? What do I stand for? You know, do I live my values? You know, or do I pretend? You know, what do I think of myself? And the business of sexuality is a tremendous player in this business of confidence and power.
Yeah, it really draws back to what you said earlier about the Jewish joke, you know, and how if we're that concerned, dissatisfied with that outward appearance and focused on that beauty mirror, how can we tap into pleasure? Like, that's such a disconnect. They're like not the same thing at all.
Exactly. And many millions of women are living in that.
Mm.
So, you know, another really great question for people is, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in your world, in your life? 10 being fully confident. What's in the way? You know, can you walk into a room in comfort? A room of strangers? And when you are attractive, in terms of my definition of attractive, confident, open, generous, curious, in a mood of wonder, people want to know, what do you know? Who are you? What are you doing here? You know?
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
That must also correspond, we haven't quite talked about this, but like the essence of sexual energy of this creational life force, which emanates into all the things that you're talking about.
Yeah. So strong. We are physical, like in terms of physics, physical beings that are in constant vibration. And we're constantly moving either towards or away from other people, objects. You know, what is it that's calling me towards you? What is it that's pushing me away from you? So this repelling, attracting energy is always there. What makes someone attractive? You know, with their eyes open, that are longing to see you, longing to hear you, longing to feel you. Powerful.
Yeah, so powerful. And intimacy, that's what I hear. Like you're describing that openness to intimacy with another human.
Right. The chapter of my book about intimacy is called Dancing Naked. And I ask a question at the beginning of the chapter, which is, do you want to be loved for who you really are or for who you pretend to be? And so a lot of intimacy is really about your capacity to tell the truth, to speak authentically. So my husband and I have an agreement about honesty, which is that we promise that we're going to tell each other everything that we don't want to tell each other.
Wow.
That brings you much deeper into intimacy. Because intimacy is like the willingness to be known.
Mm.
How do you blend into another human being? This thing that I call we. That there's an energetic being that's created out of our relationship, which is the we, and that's our shared concerns, our shared vision, our shared desire, and that's available through intimacy. We expand it with our intimacy.
Yeah, and expand that intimacy through your truth telling.
And expand our intimacy into the planet, so that the family becomes more intimate. There's more openness. And, there's so many problems that we've inherited. The inability to be in conflict, for example. We don't know how to sit in the fire. That's something that I know that you know something about.
Yes.
Yeah. But I talked with a guy while I was in Chile 2 weeks ago, asked him the question 1 to 10. His number was 7. It's a very common answer. And what was missing, he says, I have a lot of stress in my job. I was like, well, if you have a plan, you can be satisfied now that you're on the right path to create the kind of work that feeds you, that you love. And you don't have a plan. And he said, oh yeah, I have a plan. I was like, really? Oh, tell me your plan. He said, get another job. I said, that's a desire, but it's not a plan. It's an idea.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I would guess that also relates a lot to our relationships where desire versus plan get mixed up.
Right. Yeah. Well, in relationships, people have a very hard time speculating about an unknown future. People have a very hard time being in the space of not knowing. Being in the space of not knowing is technically anxiety. This is Heideggerian. Anxiety is the manifestation of not knowing in your body and emotion. So you don't know how to move, and you get anxious because you think you should know how to move, rather than being in the place of not knowing and having that be okay. And of course, anxiety turns into fear. And then when you're living in fear and anxiety, your power is tremendously diminished.
Yeah, then your plan, whatever plan you make, is very inhibited by that disempowered place. And probably since there's this thing about the vulva, and that it is becoming more empowered. I would say a lot of women are paying more attention to it, and there's more coming up around it, but still, like, you might consider like a woman with her child who might be very fearful of her own body, and then she kind of won't even talk about that place of power that the woman has, so that then there's this total disconnect from this place that's also near our rootedness of power.
Right, exactly, the root of it. Did your mother tell you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, from a young age I knew about
Wow.
a lot of stuff.
Unique.
Yeah, my mom was very scientific, so she was like very much not influenced by religion and kind of anti,
Cool.
Yeah. So it was more easier, less emotional for her to talk about it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hmm. 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 And then you also talked about this internal critic. Um, Maybe you want to say some about that and how it impacts our power and ability to access pleasure.
Yeah. Well, just think about what your internal critic is saying.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you didn't do this right. You should have done it this way. Why are you so stupid, lazy, crazy, ugly? All of that stuff, because we don't know how to deal with failure.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to really learn. You know, it's like, oh, yes, I can learn how to play tennis. But when it comes to the emotional learning that people have to do, um, there's a lot of stuckness because we don't open ourselves to not knowing. In our culture, uh, when you know, you look good,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and when you don't know, you look bad.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really provides a heyday for the internal critic. Not good enough. When are you going to be good enough?
Yeah, it's a great question to burst that bubble.
Right? Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. How do you help people access that space where they can identify the inner critic? Because sometimes it can become someone's dominant frame, and then they don't know another way or a way to step back and see like, oh, this is my inner critic.
Well, when your inner critic is dominant, you tend towards pessimism.
Mm-hmm.
Your horizon of possibilities is exceedingly limited. You can't really go beyond these limitations, these walls. So one of the things that I like to show people is that there are multiple valid interpretations available about any situation there is.
Mm.
You
Mm.
know, it's the difference between a fact and an opinion. You know, the fact is that I'm 72.
Mm.
Now, I'll make up a lot of stories about what does that mean that are completely untrue. They could be valid, but so could other stories be valid. So the way that I work with people is allowing them to begin to see different possibilities and different perspectives to look from.
Mm. Yeah. And that sounds like the less scary way to be okay with the unknown.
Yeah, well, the unknown is here.
Right.
You know, I mean, the unknown is a fact of life. How are you going to deal with it?
Mm.
You know, children are very good examples for us because they're also living in this world where they don't know anything about what's going on, but still they come to it with a certain kind of wonder.
Mm.
You know, I don't know and I love it versus I don't know and I'm so screwed.
Yeah.
So it's a question of choosing the attitude. You know, you can, if you can see your attitude, you have the opportunity to change it.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, awareness, such a big.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Be aware so you can make an actual choice or make a plan.
Yeah. So generally what you need is someone to help you see a larger perspective than the one that you currently see. Because for us, whatever we see, we think that's fixed and we think that's the way that the world is out there,
Mm.
as opposed to that we're actually creating this whole world in here.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and then asking for help is another big thing that's like a no-no in our culture as well, which you have to be open to ask for help to get that reflection or to get that, um, yeah, in relationship to widen your perspective.
Right. And actually, we need to ask for help. This is, people don't want to even say that they're dissatisfied, because once you say I'm dissatisfied, you have to recognize that you don't know what to do about it. Because if you did know what to do about it, you would have already done something about it. So there's an incredible power associated with saying, I'm dissatisfied and I don't know what to do. I need someone to help me.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that just creates the opening for you to get satisfied, for you to, be on the journey towards, opening to what you need.
Right, exactly.
Mm.
So, an unwillingness to be dissatisfied is a way in which we contract our lives.
Mm.
We can be expansive when we can look out and say, wow, I don't know.
Mm.
But I can dream. And then the internal critic is saying, no, how are you going to do that? You didn't do, that voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually reminds me of schooling, how most of us are schooled, basically, the structure.
Don't raise your hand when you have the wrong answer.
Yeah.
You'll be shamed.
Yeah. And there's only one way to do it, and that's the mental way.
Right.
That is structured, every day into lines of chairs that are facing, or period classes, and you have to move from one to the next. And yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
A lot of unlearning we need to do.
Right. And, to a great extent, it's because of our, the enormity of our cities, our communities are so big that trying to get control is to put 30 kids in a class and line up the chairs this way and change the periods. But, when you have smaller communities, there's much more flexibility and the capacity to honor the differences amongst people, as opposed to trying to make them all the same and get 1,600 SAT scores.
Mm. And would you say control is linked to the inner critic?
I think that it's all wired up together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's your journey been of like breaking out of that, in any way you want to talk about it? Relationship, spirituality, sexuality?
Well, I was born into a highly dysfunctional family, highly dysfunctional. My mother and father married after knowing each other for 2 weeks. And in her last year of life, I asked her why she had done that, because it actually was the second time that she did it. She said, well, I was just afraid that once he got to know me, he wouldn't want to marry me.
Mm.
And my mother was a gorgeous woman who was also an alcoholic and a drug addict. So my journey has been propelled by that craziness, and I married the first time at 19.
Mm.
And I didn't know what to do with my life, so I thought I'd become a mother, and did so when I was 20.
Mm.
So there was something about my mother, though, that was wild and adventurous, that she gave me, so I could leave home and I could do things that I wasn't really expected to do. And I've been married now to Christian, who is my third husband, 30 years this year. And he's an adventurer too. And, we've just traveled together and learned together. And, I ask people to put together a list of absolutely must-have qualities in another human being that you're going to be in partnership with. And one of them, maybe one of the most important ones, is that I have to be with someone who's fascinated with learning.
Mm.
And so, I worked in corporate America. I was a manager in American Airlines, and I did all kinds of things. the studying of the philosophy of language allowed me to see how it is that we create the world in our stories.
Mm.
And that we can change our narrative at any time.
Mm.
It's not to say, oh yes, I'm changing my narrative now, I'm going to be a player in the WNBA. Obvio, no. But there is a multiplex of coherent narratives that I could be inventing. And the question is, are they coming from a positive outlook or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm. Mm.
Being in peace, being satisfied, fully satisfied in the present moment, is being in peace and satisfied with the past. So, for whatever abusive relationship, my family had, and there were many, many things, I've been able to mine the brilliance out of all of it. It's kind of like going under the ground and finding these beautiful diamonds.
Mm. Mm. It sounds like that's what you help women do as well.
I do. Because it's available to all of us. This is not magic. It's holding up a new mirror.
Mm. 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 Maybe I'd love you to say again what your, that mirror that you'd like us to hold up, a little bit more about that again, like the confidence. You have some a couple of words that you said before.
Yeah, that really what makes someone attractive
Mm.
is self-confidence, openness, curiosity, generosity, walking in the world in a mood of wonder,
Mm.
contribution, knowing, what do I bring? Why am I here?
Mm.
All of these things help us to move in the world with power.
Mm. Well, that was very, very beautiful, I think, and empowering. I love your straight style, or, very clear style, I should say.
Philosophy of language.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really important, the words that you use. Sometimes people say, well, it's just semantics. No, it's not.
Mm. Mm.
We want to examine, what is it that we think? What is it? How does that thinking come out of our mouths? And what does it show us about where we're coming from?
Mm. Yeah. Are there any suggestions you give people? Because obviously when you start thinking about what comes out of your mouth or what's going on in your head, to rewrite those narratives, or, learn how to speak a different narrative as well.
Well, it's a question of practice, to become an observer of your narrative is a whole discourse unto itself.
Mm.
So, what am I doing right now with my speaking? How am I engaging you? What am I reflecting about the world? So we don't generally have habits well developed to become an observer of the kind of observer we are. So it's like a whole different level of observation. I look out and I see bamboo. That's one level of observation. But then there's the superior level or a higher level of observation. It's like, so why is this bamboo interesting to you? What is it that you're doing with the bamboo?
Mm.
Why are you focused on the bamboo? So it's questioning the observer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that you learn. It's not a trick that you can learn in a book. It's something you practice, like dance, how do you move your feet? How do you move your body? How do you play tennis? There are distinctions and practices
Mm-hmm.
that most people have never learned in school.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm speaking to you, either I'm drawing you in or I'm pushing you away. How do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And in the book, I talk about that in the philosophy of language, there's something called speech act theory. And in speech act theory, there's only 6 moves that you could ever be making whenever you open your mouth or you listen.
Mm-hmm.
There's only 6 things that you could be doing with your words. You're doing them all the time, but almost nobody knows what they are. So therein, is just a major opportunity for expansion. Because, well, one of those moves is to make a request, to ask someone for something.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, how do you make an effective request?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, so these are things that we've never learned in school. How do you make an assessment about the future? Because you can't predict it. How do you make an assessment about the future that's so compelling that people say, oh, I'm going with you?
Mm-hmm. Mm. And I'm guessing one of those emotional blocks to making a request, because this talk was also about shedding sexual shame, is shame. And
Like, do I deserve to have what I'm asking for?
Mm.
Is what I'm asking for normal? I would like you to touch my body with, the top of a Swell bottle. I mean, I, people can get shamed about whatever it is that they want, but also with making requests is granting the listener of your request the ability to say yes or no,
Mm-hmm.
and not to feel bad for a no.
Mm. Mm.
Imagine the power of that.
Yeah, we need a lot more of that power in the world.
That's right. That's right.
Mm. Do you have any tips about tapping into that?
Well, the first thing is that you have to recognize that you don't operate that way.
Mm.
Um, just think about the request that you make to your lover. Well, if you love me, you would do it. And there's that. People live that way. And they live this way of keeping score. Well, I did this for you last week. You should do this for me this week. And it's manipulation. And it's not really granting freedom to the other. So, one of the things that we would want to have in a relationship is a commitment to accept a decline from the other without resentment.
Mm.
But it's so obvious once it's said, but who's saying it?
Mm.
It's not something that we've grown up with.
Yeah, true. I think it's actually more prevalent in the culture of the LGBTQ movement, that they have kind of implemented more because they have more talks around sexuality and desires and needs and all that stuff, like more of these commitments around how do we operate in this space, versus where shame often causes people to just not want to look at all because it makes them feel bad.
Right.
Mm. Mm. And then dancing naked to me now is like, that's about the truth, right? The freedom for us all, both to express our truth to each other.
Yes. And one of the things that we've never really learned how to do is to speak to someone and offer a critical assessment.
Mm.
And we never learned how to listen to critical assessments. It's like, well, let me tell you why that's not true. And or a whole line of defense.
Right. Mm.
So how do I make an assessment to you that you would receive like it was a contribution?
Mm.
Wow, thank you for letting me know that. Thank you. That's really helpful for me to see. We don't know how to do that
Mm.
very well.
Yeah, I would say, and that goes back to the learning, being open to learn.
Exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, so if you want to learn, see, relationship is a domain of mastery.
Mm.
Just like mathematics, piano, anything that you could learn, relationship is a domain of mastery. You can become excellent at it, but who knows what the standards are? What is it to be competent? What is it to be proficient? To recognize nobody taught you how to do this, and you know, fall in love, you get married, and then the shit hits. So imagine, and you have to get a license to drive a car. You know, you have to take a test. You don't have to take a test to get married, and you certainly don't have to take a test to become a parent. But parenting is a domain of mastery as well. And these are things that in our society just have gone untaught.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
It's a lot to learn.
It is.
And so when you come back to confidence and to power, recognizing the vastness of your incompetence is a very powerful thing.
Mm. It is. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you so much for being a teacher of that, and for not only being a teacher, but living it and embodying it in the world and in your relationship, because I really only believe in teachers who do that. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah. It's not about the information.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, this was a great talk. Thank you so much, Karen. And this is Karen Aberle, and her book is Love's Invisible Dance. So you can get it on Amazon.
Amazon, indeed.
Awesome. You can get it on Amazon, and also her free gift, which is very generous, is below. So you should totally check it out. Obviously, she showed us some of her skills, so well worth it.
Yeah. Be in touch.
Awesome. And thank you so much. And thanks everybody for watching this beautiful talk.
Thank you.
Yeah.